The relationship between faith and government is not always easy. As a matter of fact, many people argue that they should definitely be separate. However, my guest today, Dr. Janet Epp Buckingham, has had a lifetime passion to unite public policy with faith. So is it possible? Let's find out. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
So, a lot of people say, actually, and here in Canada, a lot of people say the separation of church and state, which isn't even a concept that we have in Canada. Can you just talk a little bit about that idea?
It's very true that we never have really had the separation of church and state in Canada. From the very beginning of Canada, back in 1867, there was a very strong role for churches and for Christians in Canadian society. And our government was, has always funded Christian organizations that are doing good work. I think about international development, for example. Christian organizations can get funding the same way that others can. We've always had funding for Roman Catholic schools in various provinces. So we don't have separation of church and state. That's an American concept. People only use it in Canada when they want to keep religious people out of public life.
And there does seem to be a percentage anyway of Canadians who think, faith is something that's very personal. It happens on Sunday, it happens in your private life, but keep it out of the government, keep it out of your public life. What do you think about that?
If we keep our faith to ourselves, then we're not really being true to ourselves. The Bible has a huge amount to say about all kinds of things in life, about how you treat your neighbor, how you treat what they call the alien, but which is like the refugee or the immigrant. There are all kinds of issues that you can find a biblical understanding of, and we want to make sure that that is part of the discourse, not that Christians control the public agenda, but that Christians can speak into it. And there are many Christian politicians that want to make a positive difference in our world and make Canada a better place.
And we have so much to say. I think, when people say separated, they don't realize things like integrity and honesty and care for the poor, as you said, there's so many qualities about us that got to serving others and preferring others before ourselves and being good with our money. And there's just so many things biblically that teaches us to be good citizens of this country. To say to leave that at home is to say to leave your values at home in a sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We just have a new government here and in Canada. A new election has passed. We have a new government now. And, we're, as people of faith, we're going to be building a new relationship with this government. What are some of the things that as Christians we can look for, that we can celebrate, some of the things that maybe we need to advocate for?
After 9.5 years of conservative rule, I think we're pretty used to understanding how the conservative government worked and the kinds of issues that they would deal with. But the Liberal government, I think, is going to be quite different, and it's going to deal with a different set of issues. And I know some Christian NGOs in Ottawa are really excited to see a government that's going to be interested in the environment and having better environmental and stronger environmental policies, particularly on climate change. Promises to bring in more refugees. I know of churches that have wanted to be sponsoring refugees, and there's been some kind of blockage and they haven't been able to get the refugees to sponsor. So the refugee issue, and hopefully things will really open up to be able to sponsor more refugees internationally. And then poverty, both internationally and in Canada, this new government has said that they really want to address poverty, and hopefully will have some strategies on poverty and homelessness.
So there's a lot to celebrate. I know on my social media feed, as the election results were announced, I had equal parts celebration and despair.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. It is different things, and I also the inquiry into missing women and Aboriginal women is close to my heart. I was really happy to see that there may be something happening on that front so that we can address that issue better. Of course, people of faith are also concerned about the abortion issue and some of the life issues, and maybe the Liberal government might be on a different side than some people of faith are. So in those circumstances where you're saying, they're advocating something that doesn't line up with our faith, and we realize we don't rule, and it's not a theocracy. At the same time, how do we be engaging, and how do we work with that to see if we can help make a difference?
Yes, because two issues that I think are of great concern that are going to be, very front and center very soon are the legalization of marijuana and the legalization of euthanasia. And I'll take the euthanasia one first because The Supreme Court of Canada ruling takes effect very early on in February, and the criminal prohibition on physician-assisted suicide is going to become null. And so we need new legislation on this. And issues like protection of the vulnerable is very important, so that people who are in their final days are not feeling pressured to end their lives, and also so that physicians who for religious or conscientious reasons don't want to be killing their patients can have a right of conscientious objection.
So important. And just,
Yes.
and, you know, people facing disabilities as well are worried that someone is going to judge their quality of life differently than they may. They may think, you know what, I'm happy to be alive and I have a great quality of life, but someone else might look at them and say, oh, you know what, we need to stop their suffering. But, you know, they may not feel that way, and they usually don't.
Yes, and because there's scarce resources. Oh, well, we don't really want to be giving you, you know, dialysis or a new wheelchair or something because of your disability. And, well, you know, you could really just end your life. And the pressure that's going to be put on people is going to be enormous.
So we need to be in prayer for this new government as they look at this, and they don't have a lot amount of time to actually come up with something.
That's right. And I think that Christians just need to be willing to speak to some of these issues, to stand with those who are working with disabled rights organizations, to work with physicians who are concerned about their rights of conscience, and to not be afraid to speak up on these kinds of issues.
And you know, we haven't always had the reputation of being warm and engaging on these issues. You know, sometimes we've been a little strident in our voice, and I think we need to learn to find a way to do it in a way that, you know, brings people into the conversation. And I know that's part of what you do with the Laurentian Centre. You're the director of the Laurentian Centre, and you are working with the next generation of people who will be working in government and communications. Tell me a little bit about what you do.
Well, I run an extension program for Trinity Western University. Now, Trinity Western is out on the left coast, out on the west coast of Canada. Christian University has been there since 1962, and in the early 2000s started this program in Ottawa called the Laurentian Leadership Centre. Upper year students come for a visiting semester, and they do a half-time internship and take some courses alongside it. And they do internships in a wide variety of areas, some in political offices, some in government offices, some with media, and some with non-governmental organizations. And I have to say, my students are really, they are leaders. They're people who want to make Canada a better place. They want to find their place in the world and find out how they can make a positive contribution in Canada. It's very exciting to be working with upper year students who are very engaged in the world. Many of them stay on in Ottawa, and I have 70 or 80 students former students that are working in a wide variety of areas in Ottawa and making a positive difference in a lot of different ways.
And so you're engaging with them on a lot of these issues that we're talking about as people of faith. You know, what should we care about? How should we be engaged? Tell me some of the concerns that they have, because I think they're a little bit different sometimes as you go through the generations.
Yes, it's true. And I see them as not wanting to have, they don't want to be against things, they want to be for things. They're not afraid to put their back into things. They have enormous energy and enthusiasm. I've had quite a few students who are very energized over ending human trafficking, so that has been a huge issue for them. A lot engaged in environmental issues, and a lot that are concerned about poverty. So I really see those issues resonating with them, and they're willing to maybe take a different approach, and they're very much wanting to work relationally, which I think is a very positive step, to be developing relationships with people in government and politics to move issues forward.
Well, we talk about all these obvious kind of faith-based issues. What about things like the economy? Is that a spiritual issue, and should we be concerned about it? You know, we talked before the election about how do I decide who to vote for? Do I just decide somebody who's pro or against abortion or some other issue that's really close to my heart? Or, you know, so should we be concerned about the economy?
We should be concerned about the economy, and one of my final classes that I teach is focused totally on the common good, the public good. And as Christians, I think we can't just be looking at things for ourselves, but we have to be looking at what is the common good for our society and a good way forward for everyone. And so when we're looking at the economy, we're always looking at, how can things be good for everyone in our society? And that does mean, the poor and the vulnerable at the one end. It also means good stewardship, and we have a lot of principles of good stewardship in the Bible, and those apply not just to ourselves, but good stewardship of the public money as well. And as you were saying earlier, things like integrity are incredibly important, and that's been one issue that's been very difficult to watch over the last couple of years, is seeing people who have misused government money and, calling on government to use money wisely and to be making sure that the economy is benefiting everyone in our society.
Those are such good thoughts. We're just about out of time. Your best advice for Canadians now as we come into kind of a new era of Canada with a government that may be a little less faith-friendly than the previous one. We'll see, it remains to be seen. What would you say the average person should be doing now?
Well, I definitely think that we should always be praying for our leaders and praying for wise counsel. It's also a good time to get to know your local representative. Hopefully people voted in the election.
More than ever, 68%.
More than ever.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of new members of parliament. Oh my, a huge number of new members of parliament. It's a good time to go and meet with your member of parliament and say, I want you to know I'm praying for you, and if there's anything we can do to help you to govern better, we're here to be helpful and supportive. Not to take an angry stand, but to take a very positive stand and build a relationship there.
That's great advice. I talked to a number of people who do have those relationships, Nation at Prayer, the National House of Prayer, and they tell me how much people who are governing appreciate that. They have a lot of stresses, personal life, public life, and they need our support regardless of whether we agree on everything. That's what we do as a Christian. Thank you so much for coming here.
Great, thank you.
Appreciate the work that you do.